Have you ever needed a friend? I tell you, you need a friend when you've had an affair, when your daughter has been raped, when your son has been murdered, when you lost your home, when you're running from your life, when you go from being highly favored of God and hearing His voice every day to barely speaking to Him. You know you need a friend. You think, how in the world could all of that happen to one person? Well, it did. In 2 Samuel 17, we see David in desperate need of a friend. He's running for his life from his son Absalom. Absalom has decided that he is going to take over the kingdom. David has fled from Jerusalem, and now he's headed toward the mountainous city of Mahanaim. And he ends up there with Absalom and his army in hot pursuit. 2 Samuel 17, 27 through 29 gives us a picture. Now this first verse, 27, it has a lot of really hard names. And they're the ones I normally say, let's just skip over them. So I'm going to do my best to say them today, okay? 2 Samuel 17:27. Now it happened when David had come to Mahanaim that Shobi, the son of Nahash from Rabbah, of the people of Ammon, Machir, the son of Amiel from Lodebar, and Barzillai the Gileadite from Rogelium, brought breads and basins, earthen vessels and wheat and barley and other things, because they said, the people are hungry and weary and thirsty in the wilderness. So here we have these people. Since fleeing from Jerusalem, David, his household, and this group of few remaining friends had found few people that would comfort them, and even fewer comforts out in the wilderness. And when he arrived at the mountainous city of Mahanaim, David found a reception of supporters of some of the wealthier and more distinguished citizens of the land. Once he was relatively safe, David could rest for a bit among friends there who supported him. Heads of clans declared themselves in his favor and supplied him with the necessities that he and his followers needed. 3 people are mentioned representing all of the clans. Let's look at those 3 people with those hard names that I just read about. First of all, it's interesting to find Shobi the Ammonite there. You see, after Shobi's father, Nahash, the king of the people of Ammon, died back in 2 Samuel chapter 10. Hanan, his older brother, became king. Well, David and the father king had always been friends. And so David sent out some of his servants to comfort Hanan. And he wanted him to show his respects and let him know that he was sorry for his father's death. The problem is, this young boy listened to his friends. He listened to the princes of Haman, who convinced him that David was not doing anything except sending spies so he could search out the land and destroy it. So what did he do? He took David's servants. He cut their beards off. Then he cut their tunics off all the way up to way too far. And he sent them back home. That enraged David. These men were humiliated. He sent word to those men. He said, you stay there in Jericho. Don't come to Jerusalem till your beards are grown out. We're going to send you new clothes. But in the meantime, he gathered his forces together, and a long war started between the people of Ammon, the Ammonites, and David. This war continued, and by the end of 2 Samuel chapter 10, the people of Ammon were shut up in their capital city of Rahab. So everyone took a break for the winter. Now, the problem with taking a break is in 2 Samuel 11:1. Very famous verse that most of us know because we know what happened next. In the spring of the year, when kings go out to battle, David sent Joab, his servant, and all Israel, and they destroyed the people of Ammon and besieged Rahab. But David remained at Jerusalem. Uh-oh. We know what happened when he stayed. It was during this time that David went through that sin of Bathsheba. He went through sin and heartbreak while the war raged on. It was during this time that he lost his son because of sin. David remained in Jerusalem, shut up in his castle, isolated from people, isolated from God. But one can't stay in mourning. And 2 Samuel chapter 12 tells us in verses 24 through 49, it gives us a picture of what happened. It said David comforted Bathsheba, his wife. After he did that, Joab sent messengers to David. It says, I have fought against Rahab. Now come, gather the rest of the people and encamp against the city and take it. So David gathered all the people and went to Rahab and fought against it and took it. Well, Shobi, who shows up there with David later, apparently had remained faithful to David during all this time after his brother Hanun was defeated. Shobi was appointed the next king under David to rule over the people of Ammon. In this time of pain and loss, David gave Shobi a second chance. Now we see, years later, we fast forward back to David's present time when he arrives in the city running from his son. And who shows up? Shobi. Shobi understood death. He lost his father, just like David had lost his sons, his family. He understood sin in the family, just like David did. Shobi's brother sinned, David's son sinned. And he knew what it meant to lose everything the same way David did. But he also knew how to receive. David had given him a second chance. David had brought him up from the ashes when his life was destroyed and he was fearful of his own life. David had given Shobi that second chance that he needed. That's the friend that came to him. And if you don't understand why someone is grieving so much for so long, well, consider yourself fortunate that you don't. But also understand that when that person that is going through their greatest time of grief and their greatest fear and their greatest time of defeat, unless you have been there to some degree, you cannot empathize with them the way that Shobi was able to do with David when he came. The second friend was Machir, the same son of Amiel of Lodebar. He's David's second friend. Now, Machir had been a supporter of Saul, King Saul, who kept Jonathan's son Mephibosheth. And when David decided, I need to do something to keep my promise to Jonathan, he sent for one of Saul's servants, and he said, I know Jonathan has a son, and he's a cripple, though. And he's living down in Lodebar. Now, Lodebar is a part of the country meaning without pasture or land of no bread. And so what he's saying is he is living in the most poverty-stricken place you're going to find. This is a place where you don't want to go. I mean, it's a desert. It says that they don't have any pasture, so that means that they can't have any cattle there. There's no way for them to have any sheep there. And there's no bread. There's no food and there's no means of livelihood where Machir was from. And it said that Mephibosheth had been sold into the household, or he was living in the house of Machir, which that name means to be sold or to tumble into ruins, to perish, to be brought low, or to decay. He is in a place of poverty, and his very name means to decay, to be tumbled into ruins. This is a man that is coming from a place with no income, no possible hope of income, and who has himself been brought to ruins. And he comes to David perhaps because David treated Saul's household well, maybe because he liked the way David treated Mephibosheth, and he wanted to repay that kindness. So David now is reaping a reward for kindness to Mephibosheth, the son of David. But when Machir comes, he doesn't come bringing gifts because he has no gift to bring. The only thing he had to offer was himself, was his support. And maybe he came to receive, knowing that even though David's running, David is now in a fortified city. David is now in a place where other people who are friends will be bringing to him. And maybe Machir is at the place that I don't have anything to give you, but I will support you. And yes, in my supporting you, I recognize that just like Mephibosheth received from your hand, I will also be able to receive. And they are the friends who will always need our provision. And we all have friends like that. Friends that we need to help. They're loyal to us, they're friends to us, but there are always going to be someone there that they'll always have a need, and they'll always look to us to be able to provide them out of friendship because there is a need. Now, the third one is Barzillai the Gileadite. Now, this is a man of very uncommon character. He is a wealthy 80-year-old friend of property and honor. He is one of my favorite characters in the Bible. I just love this Barzillai. With all of his years and all of his bodily infirmities of old age, he still had loyal devotion to the distressed monarch. And he was particularly encouraging. He said, I don't need a thing from you. I just want to be with you, and I want to give you out of my abundance. Later on, when the war with Absalom was over, and David was ready to make his return journey to Jerusalem, Barzillai loved David so much that he came to him and said, hey, I made this second journey all the way from my home to this mountainous city just so I can support you and go with you to the river Jordan and see you across. David knew that he was old. And he says, hey, look, why don't you just come and live with me in Jerusalem? I will take care of you for the rest of your days. I'll see that you never have any needs at all. Just come, just be my friend. You're who I need. I needed a companion like you. Barzillai told David, I'm so old. I can't enjoy the music I would hear when they're playing. He must have lost some teeth because he says, I can't even enjoy the food. I'm so old. He says, I've lost my taste for food. And he said, and all the pleasures of the palace, they don't mean anything to me. He said, let me go home. Be among my friends. Let me die there and be buried with my family. He said, if you want to do something good for me, show kindness to other people. And David did. But Barzillai gave David true wealth. He gave him his love and he gave him his time. Barzillai didn't need anything else. When David was in need, he gave him possessions. But when David no longer had needs, he says, I'm going to love you. And here, I made this trip just so I can spend some time with you. That's a friend. Friends, we all need them. And believe it or not, we all need what these three represent. Shobi, he's the one who can empathize with us and can offer comfort when we're going through our distress. We need someone that we can just pour our heart out to and understand everything that God has brought us through and everything that he is taking us through at the moment, because they've been there. This is the type of friend you don't have to pour out your heart to because they understand with just a look, or they're the type of friend that you can just talk to for hours and hours and they'll listen because they do understand. Then we need a Machir in our life, someone who has nothing to offer but his presence. He reminds us that we're not the only one with problems. Some people have problems worse than ours. And he reminds us that even when we're going through those problems, we will always have something that we can give. And that's a lesson that David learned. David learned to give. He was a giver. And we all need that Barzillai who gives us emotional support and physical support, taking care of our needs. One who does not expect anything and who does not even need anything in return. 3 friends. What kind of a friend are you? God has placed you in a position now so that you can be a friend to someone. You might think, oh, not me. I'm at the place I'm needing friends. Well, the Bible says if you're going to be a friend, if you're going to have friends, you have to be a friend. David made friends of Shobi when he was in power. He made friends with Machir when he took care of Mephibosheth and took him out of his home so there was one less mouth to feed. And when David needed a friend, those that he had been friendly to came to be a friend of his. So which kind of friend are you? Are you the needy friend? The one who can empathize? Or the one who God has just blessed so much that you want to share your blessings with others? God has put you in a position that you can help others. You can look beyond what you're currently going through to see the need of someone else and know that God has put them in your life for a purpose that you can bless them and be used by God in a mighty way or in a small way. Either way, it's going to affect someone in a big way.